So next week you have your second exam for this course, and it's going to cover the material from chapter 3, chapter 4, and sections 6.1 and 6.2. But there's really only 4 big things that I want you to be able to do. And what I want you to be able to do is a confidence interval and a hypothesis test. And I want you to be able to do the confidence interval one of two ways, using simulation or using a distributional approximation. And then the same thing with the hypothesis test. I want you to be able to use simulation or a distributional approximation. And we've talked about the simulation methods that go most easily with each of those tasks. So with a confidence interval, the easiest way to do the simulation is with the bootstrap. And for a hypothesis test, the easiest way to do the simulation is with randomization. Although if you had a bootstrap distribution and I asked you to make a conclusion about a hypothesis test, you could. And if you had a randomization distribution and I asked you to make a statement about a confidence interval, you could. In the same way that if you'd used a distributional approximation to compute a confidence interval, you could say something about the hypothesis test and vice versa. So if you're using a simulation method, you're either going to be using StatKey to actually do it, or writing about how you could. So I might ask you to describe how you could use cards or coins or some other familiar object from real life in order to do some simulation. And then for the distributional approximations, then you need to know how to do formulas for the standard error. And you need to know how to find critical values. And the critical values piece, that's again using StatKey. So let's think about this with respect to the parameters that we have considered in most detail for the distributional approximations. So we had 6.1, which was about 1 proportion. I'd like you to be able to do a confidence interval and a hypothesis test in the different ways that we talked about on the previous page. And the same thing for 6.2, which was about 1 mean. I'd like you to be able to do a confidence interval and a hypothesis test in the 2 different ways. So I'm going to make a new YouTube playlist that has some review materials, and I'm going to repost some of the videos that we've seen from previous sections. And that means that for the distributional approximations, that's mostly been done. So this would be 6.1 CI, and then we've got distributional. That would be 6.1 HT, and the same thing for 1 mean. For the simulation methods for each of these pieces, that was stuff that was covered in chapters 3 and 4. I know I don't have the videos up for chapter 3 because that was before we went online. And then even the stuff in chapter 4 is a little bit more general. So I'm going to make some specific videos that go with the simulation methods for each of these particular examples. And those will be pretty short videos that will show you how to do specifically 1 proportion on 1 mean in StatKey. So I would recommend reviewing the videos, especially the ones that you feel the least confident about. So these are my study recommendations. So review the videos, do the suggested homework problems, And those are linked on this week's module. Those are problems that are in the e-textbook, but have the solutions and answers right there, so you can check your work. And I would also recommend to make a cheat sheet. Even though for this exam, I'm going to let you use open book, open notes, you can go back and review the videos while you're working on the exam. I think that it's a really good study method to create the cheat sheet and think about the most important material. And so creating the cheat sheet, I think, is both a good study activity, and then it's like a really great resource for you to use while you're taking your exam.